The year is 1274. A person has a lawful right to steal, secretly or openly, in urgent necessity to feed oneself or provide for a child. St. Thomas Aquinas, Summa Theologica, Book 2, 66-7. My name is Mark Biernat. I'm a monetary economist, and we're going to talk about the imminent collapse of the Russian economy, how this unfolds, and what I personally would do, and what St. Thomas Aquinas is recommending. It's pretty radical. So let's look at the numbers. Again, as you know, I'm not somebody to look at aggregate data, especially not from the IMF or the World Bank or anything coming from the media. What's better is Numbeo. It's crowdsourcing, it's outsourcing, it's open sourcing, but it is crowdsourcing. Over 20,000 points of data they've collected on Russia and the economy currently. Maybe it has a little bit of a lag going. Maybe some people have skewed it, but the data is pretty accurate. And I'm going to talk about it. I'm also a gamer. And if you want to know the secret of where I get this information, some of it, the anecdotal information, is you go on game forums and servers, and you can privately chat with Russians in disguise, in cloak, and you can get a sense of what's going on. Because, I mean, come on, are they really monitoring Minecraft servers? So what is the data telling us? The data is telling us, I've got to move directions. GoPro, stop recording. A little more quiet here. The data. Okay, the data. I don't want to be geolocated. The data is this. 2270. That's $2,270 for a family of four in Russia. Nothing posh to survive basically on basic goods per month. Excluding rent. The average income is $790 per person. It's gone up. Maybe they've skewed the data, they've jacked it. But the rent, I'm not talking the city center, in an expat flat. I'm talking outside the city, where you're going to have to buy a tram pass, or you're going to have to buy a bus pass, or something, add another $50 for your transportation and depreciation on your vehicle or whatever. That is $709. You can check the data, US dollars, and Numbeo. Okay, I like to use US dollars, so it's something we can relate to. So even if two people are working, they double their income, they're still at a great negative cash flow. They have no disposable income. They have negative cash. And you cannot satisfy that need, even with the basics. I'm talking potatoes. In Russia, it costs $11 a kilo for just domestic, local, whatever cheese, and $9.70 for meat. How are you going to feed your family if you've got a negative cash flow? I did the numbers. You can check me. Okay? We'll do it again. 2272. That's the amount you need, excluding rent. Then you tag on 709 for a flat, somewhere in a block of flats looking into a dumpster outside the city center. Then the average income of 790. Now, if you've got negative cash flow, this is how the collapse, the impending, it's going to happen. The latest I say is December 26, 2026. But I created this chart where the probabilities increase with each day. And with Ukraine, basically sieging Russia, I hear they cut off the main line to the gas in Russia to Moscow. And at least 17%, that's the number, but I think it's higher impact on the oil refineries. You've got a severe crisis unfolding. How are they going to pay? How's the average Russian going to survive? They may say, oh, we're Russians. This is the way it unfolds. Rising household debt and default. Step 1. Step 2, expansion of the informal economies, gray market and black market. I'll get into that. Yeah, I've been in Russia. Maybe I'm not going to admit to anything. Maybe I've paid some bribes, done some things illegal. Okay. You just go to a police officer and say, here's X amount of dollars. This is a donation to your family. He goes that way, you go that way. Maybe I've done that. Declining consumption, currency pressure and inflation. We already see it. Political instability and then systematic collapse and restructuring. Those are the 7 steps for the collapse of Russia. He asked me how it unfolds. Just go over this over and over again, and you'll see that is the way every collapse unfolds, particularly in Russia. Now let's talk about this gray market, black market, St. Thomas Aquinas. In Western theology, we have this idea of systematic theology and logic, okay? Logic. Thomas Aquinas, it comes from Plato, Aristotle. You add on maybe Marcus Aurelius about you shouldn't do any action that impedes your moral soul, even if it costs you something. But it's really Aristotle revisited in Aquinas, and he talks about the justice of being able to steal. I'm not recommending it, but if I was in Russia, I know what I personally would do. There's private property, there's the law, and then there's moral law, natural law. And if you have to steal bread to feed a child, St. Thomas Aquinas, I think he would say yes. And this has huge implications. I shouldn't say it, but I'm 62. I basically can live on nothing. I can just forage in the forest. And if you remember when you were 18, you could live on cola and chips and you'd be like ripped, okay, your abs and everything. But that doesn't apply to children. They need essential fatty acids. Prenatal, they need iodine. They need protein for this brain development, which you can't recover later in life. So if you're a mama and, you have this negative cash flow, I would really start reading St. Thomas Aquinas. The Orthodoxy in the East, they don't have this systematic tradition of theology. They just have this mystical union. I'm not criticizing them. My family came from the Orthodox tradition and then the Ukrainian Catholic, and now I'm Roman Catholic. So it's not, I'm just making a statement, a factual. They have a different idea if they're religious at all. But the communists, if they didn't do anything well, they purged out religion pretty thoroughly. And so you have a lot of people in Russia with no religion, no theology, no logic, no Mortimer J. Adler, no Aristotle, and they're just living, okay? And that is prone to manipulation by the state. So you have to think for yourself if you're a mama. I'm not saying do anything illegal. Immoral. I wouldn't sell alcohol. I wouldn't sell drugs. I wouldn't sell cigarettes. I wouldn't do anything in the adult world, okay? I definitely wouldn't join the army. If you join the army or support that war effort, that invasion, unjust invasion of Ukraine, your immortal soul is at risk. And you better take that stuff seriously. Okay? Life is short and you're dead a long time. Your immortal soul is at risk if you join that army for money in Russia. If you're in Ukraine and for the defense of a just cause, women and children, that's something different. That's called a just war, St. Thomas Aquinas. Okay, it's all debatable. But in Russia, me personally, if it was me, and I'm not recommending, I would start dismantling that unjust distribution and oligarchy control any way I could, including maybe, and I'm not recommending it, St. Thomas Aquinas' lying, cheating, and stealing, if it's to save a child's life. Because that's what we're really talking about, saving children's lives, making the world a better place. The imminent collapse will happen in Russia. I gave you the 7 steps. I gave you a date. I gave you how it unfolds. And I gave you the data that shows that disposable income, even if you double it, you still have to work in the gray economy, black market. And I don't even know what that is anymore in Russia. Go back to the 90s. I know what it was. But I don't know. There's only so much taxi driving you can do when everybody's pulling themselves up by their own bootstraps, pressing each other's pants. That's no economy based on military. It can't sustain itself. Doesn't matter how much oil they have left. And that's decreasing every day. These gas lines, this economic pressure. The problem is, like I say, the Russians, they may not have it in them. I don't mean that in a, the Russian people genetically or anything. Of course not. We're all God's children. I'm talking about the culture. It's been so nullified in their brain, any type of political activism, through fear and manipulation of the dark state and the dark power of Moscow and the Kremlin. I'm not talking about generally. I'm talking about more like a Star Wars metaphor. So the Russian imminent collapse is based on $2,272 for a family of four to support themselves in Russia, excluding rent. Then you tag on rent. You can say there's an informal economy. You could grow vegetables in the village. Doesn't happen. I don't know anybody that's doing that. Maybe a few people. They don't even have plumbing in the village, over 60%. I'm talking about when you're hitting those numbers, close to $3,000 a month to sustain yourself. Maybe you could do it in Deutschland here. Yeah, for sure. Working at Aldi, working at Rossmann's, but you can't do it in Russia. Even if two people are working, you've got to go to the gray market. You've got to do smuggling, black market. I'm not recommending it. Stealing. And I'm not recommending you to be Robin Hood. And remember, Robin Hood wasn't stealing from the rich and giving to the poor. He was stealing back from the state the taxes which the kings took from the poor people. I'm not recommending it, but read St. Thomas Aquinas, book 2:2, okay? See what he says. 6, I think it's 7. I don't have my notes in front of me. But he says it's basically a moral imperative where he says, Thomas Aquinas, stealing is not a sin, because he contradicts the categorical imperative that says stealing is always a sin. If you're in Russia, and again, like I said, I check out these, I'm on gaming forums and servers. Servers, it's the best place to get anecdotal data. Things are not looking up for Russia. The imminent collapse will happen. Thank you, Ukraine, for accelerating it. Maybe we can make the world a better place when Russia disintegrates and make it into something new. I don't know. What if we printed, 10 million Bibles and dropped them with parachutes over Russia? Or whatever, holy books, yoga. But I'm telling you, there needs to be a reformation, and it has to come from within Russia. So that's it. The Russian economy's gone. Just read the news every day about the next pipeline that's cut off. My name is Mark Biernat. I'm a monetary economist. And Biernat, you think my name means wet beer in German, or it means night beer in Scandinavian, but it actually comes from Latin, which means strong as a bear. And I'm a Ukrainian bear, and if I was in Russia, you know what I would do. Have a beautiful day. Thank you very much.